Hey folks, BlackCross here, and welcome to another review video. This one, I don't know if I'm going to make it as long or as short, because this is going to be based around a digital game. Yeah, that digital game is none other than Kingdom. Okay, so to be more precise, it's basically based around two different titles, Kingdom New Lands and Kingdom Two Crowns. So, why am I combining these two together? Well, technically, if you were to go on the PlayStation 4 store or the Nintendo Switch store, the title itself is going to be combined together as the Two Treasury collection. And of course, this also covers the physical version known as Kingdom Majestic, which is basically the two digital games that you can easily download from the disc and play it on your system. So, well, there's nothing else to explain other than just, well, the game itself. I'm going to go ahead and give you a disclaimer real quickly because of the fact that this is basically a tower defense game. If you are familiar with any tower defense game whatsoever, you know what to expect from this game. So if you are a big fan of tower defense games, or castle defenders, should I say, if you're a big fan of it, chances are you're going to love this game. If you are not a fan of any of those, I would not recommend this for you. It's hard to kind of give it a rating, you know, because, again, all my videos is based around the ideal of how likely would I recommend this game. And, you know, I'm a little bit mixed, you know. On the one hand, I want to give it a 3 because, you know, despite some of its problems, you know, there are quite a bit of problems with the game, but the games themselves are fun. If you love castle defenders, tower defense, whatever, this one you will love. I promise you that. I've played probably more hours than I care to admit to play on this games. I have not 100% them entirely, but I've had played New Lands and Two Crowns for an extended long time period, so chances are, if I'm able to play it for hours on end, chances are you will enjoy them regardless. If I'm not mistaken, PS4, Nintendo Switch, I believe Xbox One might have gotten it. I would be shocked if it isn't on there, but it's mostly known to be available for PC. But, overall, the games themselves are good, but there are some problems that do arise with these games. So let's go ahead and just kind of break down the games themselves, and then we'll discuss it even further. So with Kingdom New Lands, it is basically a tower defense game in its base value. Because what you're doing, you're expanding the kingdom. It's a side scroller. You're expanding the kingdom left and right. And as you're expanding, you are recruiting soldiers, builders, farmers, depending on what you're needing, and you're building your kingdom as wide as you can. But your main goal for New Lands is to escape the island. Yes, you have to escape the island. And the way you do that is that you build a boat, and as you build that boat, you will be sailing across to the direction where the dock bay is located at. And so your intentional ideal is to break through the portals so that way you can make a narrow escape from that island and protect the crown. That is the base gameplay of it. Of course, there are multitude of levels that is required to do that. For starters, number one, obviously, like I said, you can recruit soldiers, builders, and farmers. Well, why would you want to do that? Well, soldiers, which are your archers, either hunt game for you, such as deers and rabbits, and they will give you coin, which is what you would need in order to expand your kingdom, or even to remotely hire people to do various jobs. Builders help build stuff. That's basic material knowledge right there. And farmers, they're basically more or less used in order to help build up your gold stocks. So that way you can continue building and you can continue expanding the kingdom that much further. As you're building your kingdom, you're basically building up walls, after wall after wall in order to expand further and further. Well, as you are continuing, there are a multitude of other things that you can do. You can either increase your stats in terms of like these different monument statues. Some of them are for the archers, the farmers, the walls, and then for the knights that you can hire in. These either help give them a stronger boost in terms of attack power or defensive power, or help increase gold intake when it comes to the farm aspects. Now, of course, as I said before, you have to have it to where you build a boat, and then that boat has to sail to the other side, so that way you can make your escape from that island. Well, after you build the boat, how are you going to do that? Because, unfortunately, on either side, there are a number of portals that is basically blocking your way of getting off of the island. So, you have to destroy these porters. Gosh, I'm getting so tongue twisted. You have to destroy these portals. And how do you go about doing that? Well, for every knight that you get, and by doing that, you have to upgrade your castle keep to stone, to where you can start recruiting knights. You can recruit up to 4 knights, 2 on each side, and as you do that, you will then be able to tear down the portals whenever you are able to approach close to them. And when you destroy the portal, you'll be able to expand not only your kingdom that much further, but also too, you'll be able to get easier access to certain other materials depending on what they are, or depending on if you've already got them or not. But the hard part is that of the nighttime. During the daytime, it's the perfect way to be able to get all the things you need to get done, expand your kingdom, tear down trees, so on and so forth. But the nighttime is where the monsters come out, known as the Greed. The reason why they're called the Greed is that they will take everything and anything that they can find, and whatever it is, they will take it. If it's the normal Greed, they will not take the people, but they will attack the people, because not only will they take the different equipment they wield, they will also take the gold that they have that you use in order to recruit them. They will also take other pieces of gold that you have with you. They will take your subjects, or the hermits, as I should say. They can take a dog that you have. They'll take everything. And then, depending on the other 2 factors of greed, there are these flying monstrosity greeds that will basically take a person and swallow them whole. They'll take them. But then you have the bigger one. The bigger one is actually the more terrifying ones, because not only can they spawn 4 at a time of the little greeds, they can punch through walls. Yes, they can punch the walls and tear it down. So you can imagine, if things get really hairy, you will have to rebuild, or you will more than likely lose your crown. And again, the objective of the game is to make certain you get off the island with your crown on your head. And unfortunately, these greeds want that crown. They want it so badly that they will risk life and limb just to grab it. So we're talking like terrifying levels of just stress. And unfortunately, every night that passes on that island, it gets gradually worse and worse. So, you know, whenever you first start on an island, it starts off easy because you have like 1 or 2 at a time and stuff like that. But as you go further and further in the days, the more days that passes on that island, the more and more hectic things are going to get for you. And even more so whenever a red moon shows up. A red moon shows up indicates that monsters will show up in mass hordes. And so that basically tells you that if there's a red moon, the ideal assumption is to stay inside your keep, make certain that everyone is buffed up and ready, make certain that every archer that you have recruited is able to shoot and fire. Basically, you want to build up the best defense that you possibly humanely can, so that way you can withstand the horrors each night, so that way you can expand your kingdom. Or repair, depending on how much damage you have accumulated. Which, That can happen a lot, actually, especially if you continue staying on these lands for any extended amount of time. The good news is, though, however, depending on how you are with these type of games, this will not be a challenge for you at all. In fact, really, I think anyone who is familiar with these type of games can easily beat the game within a couple of hours of game time, really. And so that's probably a good thing. The other thing, though, however, depending on if you are a completionist in terms of trophies, there are some trophies that are going to require quite a bit of work. So in other words, if you want to get a specific trophy, that's going to require you learning how many days you need to do in order to achieve that particular trophy. Because there are some trophies that require you to kill like 20 deers in 4 days. That's actually harder said than done. That one takes a little bit of work to do. There are some that basically like destroy a portal within 10 days. I have 8 archers within my second day, and so on and so forth. Some of these are actually excruciatingly difficult and challenging in order to get that done within an amount of days, so you may want to look up a guide on how to do something like that. Another one is day calculation trophies. Obviously, the set of them are like beat it with survive the land for 10, 20, 30, 40 days, but once you get up to 50 or 60, that becomes really, really hard, really difficult in order to get to that point. However, though, there are a couple things that can help you out in order to get to 100 days, yes, 100 days of surviving an island and having to deal with the greeds. So the first thing you want to concentrate on is trying to find out if there are any hermits on your island. The best one that I highly recommend in terms of hermits is to get the one that basically makes this giant, I'm not sure what you would technically call them, but they call it a basilisk. I'm not sure if that's what it's technically called. It's basically a giant crossbow. It's very handy, especially against those giant monsters that I was telling you about, because you'll want that. You'll want that to be your main thing to have when it comes to getting through the island and surviving as long as you can, because without that one, it can be difficult to achieve that goal. The second best one is, of course, the baker, and the reason why I say it's the second best one is because what happens is that when you build a baker's place, you can, it takes a coin, I believe it takes a coin in the new lands, to have a bread out, and it will lure in subjects to where you can recruit them to do various jobs. So in other words, say you're on a land and there's like 3 different campsites, each one contains 2 persons. They will lure in those 6 people. Slowly but surely, you can build up your army without having to go back and forth to recruit more people. And depending on what island you're on, it can take an extended amount of time just to get to either side to recruit people. So having the baker actually makes that easier, to where all you gotta do is make it back to the kingdom or wherever you build your baker place, and you can recruit the people right there. The third one, however, I probably wouldn't recommend it unless you feel like, you know what, let's see what happens when we have like up to 5 on each side. And that is the one that basically allows you to recruit guards or knights. Again, that one I would not recommend as much, because while it may sound like it may come in handy, it's not an immediate handy that would work out for most people, I think. Another thing too to note on Kingdom is the fact that there are seasons in this game, and you want to be careful with those seasons, because depending on the land, depends on how long it takes before it gets to winter. And when it gets to winter, it is impossible to recruit gold. It is impossible to keep up with gold stocks. You cannot farm, you cannot hunt deer, nor rabbits. It is basically a wasteland of snow, or dead, corruption, trees, whatever. So once you get to like day 50 or 60, it gets even harder to survive because you have no more gold coming in. You can store gold throughout the entire time, but unfortunately, you cannot retain for very long. So in other words, if you're looking to go for the 100-day trophy, be extremely careful, be extremely cautious, learn your tactics, learn how to play the game correctly, and learn how you can survive for that long period of time. Other than that, if you're not looking to complete the game, this one can be easily beaten within a couple of hours, probably within a day, you know? It wouldn't be that hard to beat it, depending on your skill level, of course. Now, 2 Crowns, on the other hand, The same concept, except slightly different, actually. I say slightly different because of a couple of reasons. Number one, the main goal is not just to escape the island, but it's actually to conquer them. And how do you go about conquering them? Well, there's an extra layer of detail that they've added into the game. Now, of course, as I mentioned, you can still build up walls within Kingdom. But there are 2 tiers in New Lands, but there are 3 in 2 crowns. The first one is wood, the second one is stone, and the third and final tier is steel, metal. So as you go through the islands, you go through each island in order to attain a certain amount of stuff. Some of them you attain by either recruiting a hermit, or attaining a power-up, having the ability to use stoneworks, steelworks, so on and so forth. But unlike in New Crowns, in New Lands, every single time you enter in a new kingdom, you have to start over building up. You know, you have to find the monument that allows you to use stone pieces. You have to find another monument in order to boost up the stats or whatever, so on and so forth. In 2 Crowns, however, everything you do carries over to the next land. So in other words, for every profile you have, if you are able to attain these monuments, these areas, these hermits, so on and so forth, you can carry them with you to the next island. And you'll want to do that. You'll want to try to get as much as you can in order to get access to these other areas in order to conquer them. As you eventually get the steelwork, you'll have access to a new element known as a bomb. This bomb's main purpose is to carry it to the cave of the opposite end in order to destroy the hive of the greed. Once you do that and successfully do this, you will then beat that island, and you need to do this for the 4 remaining islands as well. This is actually another level of detail that I actually really like. In fact, personally, in my personal opinion, where New Lands is a little bit base value, 2 Crowns is actually more challenging and a lot more detailed. There's a lot more goes on, but there's a lot more that you can do, and you don't have to worry about starting over if you were to fail on an island. So in New Lands, if you fail, you have to start over completely. Whereas in 2 Crowns, if you lose the crown, a new king arrives, but you just have to rebuild what has been destroyed in the other islands. So in other words, if you play your cards right, rebuilding is not going to be as painful of an experience as you would think if you had to start over from the very beginning. So in other words, I think this one's better for other players as well, and this one I think could be very enjoyable. Another reason why this would be enjoyable is because it features 2 other modes that you can play. And one of them is Shogun, which is basically a Chinese, Japanese style look of detail that they have, where it's like samurais, you have the shoguns, and so on and so forth. And then you have the other one known as Deadlands, which is basically, and this is actually the interesting part, it basically is a skin render from the Bloodstained Ritual of the Night series. It features character themes from those games, and it's actually pretty cool to actually see this. And this one's actually pretty interesting. It's actually a little bit extra layer of detail that they've added into the game, unlike in Shogun, where it's just the same concept. In Deadlands, there's actually some extra stuff. For example, there's some extra mounts that you can attain in the game, and then there are some extra monarchs, as they call them, extra monarchs that you can attain, and they have essential different abilities that they can produce and stuff, and each one is actually pretty unique on their own level. I could go on talking about all the different details and stuff like that, but so long as you know the basis of Kingdom, you pretty much have an idea of what to expect from this game. However, though, there are some complications with this game that I think I should warn people. For starters, number one, despite the fact that it's like 8-bit style, 16-bit style graphics, it still actually kind of lags, which is unfortunate because while the game itself is fine on its own, depending on circumstances, depending on what goes on behind the scenes, it will jug a little bit even on console. So in other words, say for example you're getting passed through a group of farmers. These farmers actually give out gold as you pass through them. If for some reason you have a bunch of farmers and it's been a while that you pass through them and all of a sudden you finally decide to walk past them, they will shoot out a frickin' waterfall of gold. Wow, and while that might be good, that's not so good for the game itself. It will chug so hard. We're talking like, oh, that hurts the frames. So it's one of those things where it's like, it's definitely not perfect, sadly. I hate to say that. But the other second thing, and it's actually the biggest one in my personal opinion, that kind of ruins the game for you, is the fact that it takes hours before you get something built up. It takes literally hours before you even get to, like, say, day 10 or day 20. They are very long. It's not like how in Pikmin, where it's like 15 minutes per day. Not bad. In Kingdom, for some reason, it takes like, I don't know how long it takes for each day. Each day seems to change depending on how you progress through the game. And it's like either the night goes by faster or slower, or the day goes by so fast or slower. Then again, you're trying to do numerous of stuff within the day before night falls, to where the greed comes and tries to attack your kingdom and everything. So it takes a long time to build up anything remotely good. And unfortunately, in Kingdom 2 Crown's case, if you were to fail, guess what? You have to start over. Record, you can build up your stocks and everything like that, but you still have to start over from wherever you're at. Where in New Lands, you basically start over completely, and there you go. It's very hard to kind of stick with it, especially as it takes so many hours to actually get through. I wish there was like a functionality to where it was like a fast forward function. Then again, that would have been a very nice feature to have, especially if you build up your defenses so well. You wouldn't have to worry about keeping an eye on your guards. Your guards can actually keep up with them just fine and everything like that. And you can actually get through the winter seasons in 2 Crowns a little bit better. In fact, the good thing is that in 2 Crowns, the seasons actually cycle around, whereas in New Lands, it stays winter after like 50 days and stuff like that. Where in 2 Crowns, after so many days, it will eventually cycle over to spring again, which is good. You're not stuck in winter for like forever and ever and ever. Instead, you're more or less just on there for like a number of days. So again, it's interesting, but there are some difficulties that kind of makes me want to not recommend it to everybody. If I had to give it a rating, I would probably still give it like a 3. But realistically, I'd probably give it a 2, and that is pretty low to give. But keep in mind, we're talking about recommendations for just anyone, and unfortunately, there are some problems that I feel like as though as if not everyone's going to easily jump on board with this game. So for me, personally, I would give it a 3, and that's just for like base value. It's okay and it's good. If you are a fan of these type of games, chances are you're going to love it as much as I have. But the problems that do come along with the game does make it a little bit of a hindrance and prevent me from actually giving it a good recommendation for everybody else, you know. It's just what it is. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Kingdom is very unique in my personal opinion. It's not the best, but it's something that I think most people would enjoy, I think. It's one of those games where it's like, you can enjoy it depending on who you are. If you got the time to where you can play a game like this, chances are you will enjoy it. I do recommend this. But if you do plan on trying to go for like some of the trophies, like some of the more harder ones, definitely look up some kind of video guide or tutorial to kind of give you hints on how to survive and stuff like that, because you're going to need that knowledge. I can go into a deep analysis video about how you can survive in Kingdom, but that would take a long extent of time. So guys, thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. This is BlackCross signing off. Catch you guys later.